Welcome back to a history of Rickwood Field. This is the second part of a two-part series, so if you missed part 1, click the card in the corner to catch up. Other than that, like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and let's get into it. Ed Norton only held on to his purchase for 2 years before selling the team and stadium to the Cincinnati Reds in 1940. The Reds immediately erected a new outfield wall within the perimeter of the old wall, shrinking the dimensions to align more with Major League standards. The following season, the Red Sox came to town on an exhibition tour, and baseball fans in Birmingham were treated to future Hall of Famer Jimmie Foxx hitting a home run. 2 years later, 1942 saw the first football game played at Rickwood Field in 15 years, when it hosted the Vulcan Bowl. Taking place on January 1st, the game featured Langston taking on Morris Brown, with Langston winning the game 13-0. Rickwood Field played host to the Bowl through the 1949 season. The 1940s was a busy decade at Rickwood Field. The Black Barons won their first Negro American League pennant in 1943, defeating the Chicago American Giants in a 5-game series to claim the Negro American League championship. Earning a spot in the World Series, they ended up losing to the Homestead Grays in a series that went the distance. They followed that up with another league pennant in 1944 before taking on the Grays in the World Series again and losing for the second straight year. That 1944 campaign also saw yet another change in ownership at Rickwood Field when the Cincinnati Reds sold the ball club and stadium to a local Birmingham native by the name of G.J. Jabellis. Jabellis held on to the ballpark until 1949, when he sold it to a conglomerate made up of Al Dement, Al Belcher, and Rufus Lackey. Jabellis' time as owner at Rickwood saw what would be the most successful season of baseball to ever be played at the park, 1948. Not only success in baseball, but success in its facilities as well. First of all, ladies' bathrooms were added to the park prior to the season to help accommodate female spectators. Second, Rickwood Field set its all-time attendance mark with 445,926 fans attending games throughout the year. Additionally, Artie Wilson batted over .400 for the Black Barons, now recognized as the last professional player in baseball history to reach the mark. Though, it's worth noting that he only played 29 games and had 136 plate appearances. The team also signed a 17-year-old Willie Mays, who would go on to be one of the greatest baseball players of all time. Mays only played 13 games with the Black Barons that season, only being allowed to play on weekends so he wouldn't miss school, and finishing the year slashing .233, .313, and .326. Behind the historic bat of Wilson and the budding young outfielder Willie Mays, the Black Barons finished second in the league behind the Kansas City Monarchs, but bested them in the league championship series 4-3, earning their third Negro American League pennant. Unfortunately for them, they ran into the Homestead Grays in the World Series and fell, once again, in 5 games. Worth noting is that the 1948 Negro League World Series was the last ever of its kind. The White Barons finished the season in 3rd place, earning a spot in the semifinal series against the Memphis Chickasaws, who they beat 4-2. They then met the regular season winning Nashville Volunteers in the championship series, defeating them in 6 games as well to win the Southern Association. This earned them their first spot in the Dixie series since 1936, this time against the Fort Worth Cats, needing only 5 of 7 games to put them away and win their first Dixie series since 1931. In summary, 1948 saw Artie Wilson batting .435, Rickwood set an attendance record, and the fans in Birmingham treated to 2 league pennants and a Dixie Series championship. As mentioned earlier, The ballpark was sold in 1949, and a year later, the new ownership group went about making some improvements by shifting the dugouts to further down the foul lines and installing new box seats for fans. Then, 1950 saw the opening of a restaurant at Rickwood Field, called the Dugout Restaurant. The fans at Rickwood were treated to the White Barons winning the Southern Association in 1951, taking on the Houston Buffaloes in the Dixie Series. The Barons dispensed of their old Dixie Series rivals in 6 games to bring the championship home once again. In 1952, the St. Louis Cardinals paid a visit to Rickwood on an exhibition tour, where fans were treated to a home run off of the bat of Stan Musial. Speaking of legendary ballplayers at Rickwood Field, Toni Stone played at Rickwood for the Kansas City Monarchs, becoming the first woman to play professional baseball at the historic ballpark. Rickwood Field was awarded the hosting of the 1955 Southern Association All-Star Game, a game in which the ballpark saw its largest ever single-game crowd at 19,830 fans. The Barons took on an All-Star team assembled from the rest of the league, losing to the All-Stars 10-5 behind the bat of Chattanooga's Jim Lemon, who launched 4 home runs, the only 4 home run performance that the stadium has ever seen. 3 years after Lemon's historic performance in 1958, Al Belcher bought out his co-owners and became the majority owner of the ballpark. In his first year at the helm of Rickwood Field, the Barons won the Southern Association and took the 1958 Dixie Series in 6 games over the Corpus Christi Giants. The Dixie Series ended following the 1958 season, so when the Barons repeated as Southern Association champions in 1959, their season ended there. Unfortunately, this would be the last Southern Association pennant that the Barons would ever win. The Black Barons, for their part, won what would be their final ever Negro American League pennant. They played one more season in 1960 before the league and the Birmingham Black Barons dissolved. Major League Baseball had been integrated for over a dozen years, and the draining of talent from the Negro Leagues created financial pressure that eventually led to the closure of every one of the teams. After playing segregated baseball in Birmingham for more than 40 years, the Black Barons were no more. For the White Barons' part, they only lasted a season longer. For adjacent, yet opposite reasons, the Southern Association collapsed only a year after the Negro American League. Adhering to Jim Crow laws long after baseball's integration, the Southern Association's refusal to integrate damaged it financially and eventually led to its closure. Both leagues' closings were predictable, yet shocking. After nearly 80 consecutive years of professional baseball in Birmingham, Alabama, the fans were left with nobody to root for, and Rickwood Field sat, for the first time ever, with no tenants. The baseball hiatus wouldn't be too long, as a new Southern League was formed heading into the 1964 season, with the Birmingham Barons as one of the teams, and this time they'd be fully integrated. 1,000 seats were added to the ballpark, acquired from the recently demolished Polo Grounds in New York City, and the press box was doubled in size to accommodate both print and radio media. Baseball was back in Birmingham, but actually only for 2 seasons, as the Barons either moved or dissolved following 1965, presumably due to financial concerns. Al Belcher sold the stadium to the city of Birmingham in 1966, who decided to lease it to the Athletics owner Charlie Finley. Heading into the 67 baseball season, he moved the A's AA team to Birmingham, renaming them to the Birmingham Athletics. The A's stayed at Rickwood Field through the 1975 season before moving once again, bringing one Southern League pennant to Rickwood during their time there. that pennant-winning effort taking place during their first season in 1967. As a matter of fact, the Dixie series was revived for one season in 1967, and the A's won that as well. That Birmingham A's team was loaded with several players that would go on to win 3 consecutive World Series in the 70s with the Major League A's. 2 future Hall of Fame players and 1 future Hall of Fame manager played on that 1967 Birmingham squad, those being Rollie Fingers and Reggie Jackson and Tony La Russa. They finished the season with an 84-55 record, taking the pennant by a few games over the Montgomery Rebels. The 1971 Birmingham A's saw the Southern League combine with the Texas League to form the Dixie Association. The arrangement only lasted for a single season before the 2 leagues separated once again. The A's time in the Dixie Association and their 4 years in the Southern League after that was filled with poor on-the-field play. The 1974 season was preceded by an exhibition game at Rickwood Field between the Baltimore Orioles and Atlanta Braves. The game gave fans at Rickwood Field the opportunity to see Henry Aaron as he was on the verge of breaking Babe Ruth's all-time home run record. Both the mayor of Birmingham, George Siebels, and the governor of Alabama, George Wallace, were in attendance to see the legendary ball player. Hammer and Hank did go on to break the record that year, and the following year, Rickwood Field lost its team once again when Charlie Finley moved them to a new city. The ballpark sat vacant for 5 seasons before a new minor league team was moved in, but that dead period saw an improvement at the park. In 1979, the city of Birmingham replaced the wooden box seats with plastic ones and installed new metal bleachers all throughout the park, updating virtually all spectator seating at Rickwood Field. Then, less than 2 years later, local sports promoter Art Clarkson managed to move the Montgomery baseball team to Birmingham and rename them the Barons. This new iteration of the Barons was one that would finally stick, though their full-time occupancy of Rickwood Field was rather short, only playing there through the 1987 baseball season. Rickwood Field was over 70 years old by the time the modern iteration of the Barons had moved in, and despite decades of renovations and upkeep, it was becoming increasingly obvious that the stadium just couldn't continue to accommodate full-time occupants. Following the 1987 season, the Barons moved to the suburb of Hoover to play in the Hoover Metropolitan Stadium, where they stayed through the 2012 season before moving to their current stadium, Regents Field. Before leaving for Hoover, the Barons thrilled the fans at Rickwood Field with one more league title in 1983. Despite losing what would be its last professional resident in 1987, Rickwood Field has never truly been considered for demolition. Instead, it seems that the city of Birmingham has made every effort to find use for their historic ballpark. In 1992, the Friends of Rickwood were formed to help plan renovations for the ballpark as well as care for it. And as of the writing of this video, they are responsible for millions of dollars being invested into Rickwood Field. The Friends of Rickwood also organize various baseball games at the ballpark, as well as free public tours. A year after the creation of the Friends of Rickwood, Rickwood Field was placed on the National Register of Historic Places. Then, in 1994, the vacant ballpark was used to film scenes from the movie Cop, a biopic about the career of Ty Cobb. Hollywood showed up again 2 years later in 1996 for the filming of scenes for the movie Soul of the Game, depicting life in the Negro Leagues. That same summer, the Barons returned to Rickwood Field to begin playing what would become an annual throwback game called the Rickwood Classic. Every summer, the Barons play one single regular season game at their old stomping grounds, with both the Barons and the visiting team wearing a variety of throwback jerseys. That inaugural game in 1996 saw an attendance of over 10,000 fans as people came from all over to the old ballpark. At 86 years old, and with no permanent resident, Rickwood Field was just as alive as ever. On February 26, 2006, Rickwood Field was featured on ESPN Classic in celebration of Black History Month and in honor of the Negro Leagues. An all-African-American Black Barons team took on an all-white team called the Bristol Barnstormers. Both teams were made up of former minor league and collegiate baseball players and wore 1940s-era throwback uniforms. The Black Barons beat the fictional Bristol Barnstormers 9-8. And this was the only time that an all-white team ever faced an all-black team at Rickwood Field. 4 years later, on August 18, 2010, Rickwood Field celebrated its 100th birthday, becoming the first baseball stadium in the country to reach the mark. The 100-year-old stadium featured prominently in the movie 42, released in April of 2013, as a stand-in for Roosevelt Stadium, Forbes Field, and Shibe Park. Then, 5 years later, Rickwood Field had a baseball team move in for the first time in 31 years, when the HBCU Miles College baseball team starts playing their home games at the 108-year-old ballpark. 2021 saw a historical marker placed at Rickwood to celebrate the ballpark's role in the Alabama suffrage movement in 1915. In 2022, baseball activities at the ballpark began to increase, as it hosted the Savannah Bananas for Banana Ball, held the first ever Rickwood College Classic, and hosted the first annual Rickwood Home Run Derby. The Bananas returned in 2023, but the bigger event of the year was the announcement of Major League Baseball coming to Rickwood in 2024. On June 20th of 2023, MiLB announced a weekend of baseball to celebrate Juneteenth in 2024 and to celebrate Willie Mays, who started his career in Birmingham. The celebration was to culminate in an MiLB regular season game between the Cardinals and Giants at Rickwood Field. $5 million in renovations were promised and completed over the next year that included upgrading the playing surface, moving and padding the outfield walls, building a modern batter's eye, building a digital scoreboard, and adding protective netting down the foul lines. The celebration at Rickwood Field kicked off with a minor league game between the Montgomery Biscuits and the Birmingham Barons, with the Biscuits wearing old Montgomery Gray Sox uniforms and the Barons featuring throwback Black Baron uniforms. The day became one of mourning, though, as it was announced mid-game that legendary ballplayer and center of that week's celebrations, Willie Mays, had passed away. The week became more than just celebrating Mays' legendary career, but brought into a tribute of the impactful life of the mythic man. For what it's worth, the Biscuits won the game 6-5. 2 days later, the Cardinals and Giants came together to play the first ever official MiLB game, not just at Rickwood Field, but in Alabama as a whole. The Cardinals wore throwback St. Louis Stars uniforms, while the Giants donned San Francisco Sea Lions unis to tribute their cities' respective Negro League histories. For the first time in history, the game featured an all-black umpiring crew, and 99-year-old Negro League veteran Bill Greason threw out the first pitch. The game was a relatively back-and-forth affair, with the Cardinals edging out the Giants 6-5 in the end. 8,332 fans passed the gates and paid witness to the historic game, getting to see America's oldest ballpark finally receive its flowers. The game brought tremendous publicity to the ballpark, now much more broadly known than before, and hopefully creating future streams of support to allow Rickwood Field to serve as a mecca to the game of baseball. As of the writing of this video, More than half of all of the Baseball Hall of Famers played at one point or another on the historic field. Rickwood is hosting the annual Rickwood Classic, Rickwood College Classic, and Rickwood Home Run Derby, offering several opportunities for fans of baseball history to experience the park. The city of Birmingham and the Friends of Rickwood have provided a shining example of how to care for these precious, ancient playing grounds, showing that these ballparks hold so much more value than that of the land they sit on. Rickwood Field's enduring success stands as a testament to the deep-rooted love for baseball that fans feel, and its history stands as the perfect example that our history, the good and the bad, make up who we are. Thank you for joining me on this fun exploration of America's oldest ballpark. If you've enjoyed this work, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. We have merchandise linked below if you're interested, and if you even want more ways to support the Bad Baseball Fan, consider becoming a member by hitting the join button below. Anyways, that's all I have. Thanks for watching, and remember, if you like baseball, like this video and subscribe for more.